Recording this because I am going to be away at the beach with all my 10 kids and my sister and her family. We haven't got together in person in too long. So I'm pre-recording this because I'm going to the beach on Friday. I wanted to give you the last of the 3 back to homeschool lives that I promised to do this week so you can have it on time, just like I promised. So in case we haven't met, my name is Tara. I'm a Christian wife, homeschool mom of 10, almost 11 kids. And I've been homeschooling from the start, had no idea what I was doing. Didn't even know homeschooling existed until I was in my 20s. So I've learned it the hard way, kind of the from scratch way, and figured out how to do it, right from the start with multiple age kids. And then people started coming to me and asking me like, hey, Tara, how do you homeschool? Which is like, so cool that people would ask me about that, considering I was such a noob. But I get it, right? They meet me, they see my family, they see my kids aren't total screw-ups, and they seem to be like happy, healthy, well-rounded people. And they're like, okay, well, you probably have some advice to give, especially if they're new to homeschooling. So what happened is like in the spring, like earlier this year, I made a new friend in the neighborhood, and we're great friends now. And she came to me, she's like, I'm thinking about homeschooling her kids. Well, actually, of her 2 kids, only one was actually in school at a Catholic school in the neighborhood here. So she's kind of thinking of homeschooling, but she was super nervous because like me, she had never done that before. I don't know if she'd really ever even talked to a homeschool family, but she'd seen us, right? She started to see us and she's just like, well, if Tara can do it with a 10 and like she's home full time as well, then maybe I could figure it out. But I was nervous. I was like, what advice can I give her? I've never transitioned to homeschooling. We've only ever done it from the start. I was like, can I really advise her? I don't want to misadvise her, right? Especially on really such a big decision. But she saw something in me and in my family that she was just like, I trust you. You do have some advice to give, so please just give it to me and I'll figure it out from there, right? So I was like, she's right. I have figured this out, at least, what works for me. So I'll just give her some good general advice and, eat the chicken, spit out the bones. If it's helpful to her, great. So I did. And I'll tell you the rest of the story at the end. Here's what I shared with her first right off the bat. I was like, okay, first things first, why do you want to homeschool? Like, not to put her on the spot or like interrogate her, like to see if she qualified to homeschool. It was just an honest question for her to actually just share with me, but in sharing, like really crystallize and cement to herself, why would she even want to do this in the first place? Because everyone has a different why, whether they're looking for a custom education, they want to pass on particular values, they're dealing with health issues or social issues or whatever, right? They just want to like travel the world while they homeschool their kids. Everybody has a different why. And I think they're all like beautiful and valid, and because they're personal, they're very subjective. I asked her why, and she opened up like, boom, she talked straight for 30 minutes. I actually even shed a couple of tears. So it was like a really almost therapeutic, casual, unplanned conversation on my front porch as our kids were playing. It was just a beautiful, spring day. And she just was like unloading all these things. I don't know if she'd really talked about it with anyone of their husband, maybe even hadn't really put it all together. So by the end, honestly, she backed herself in to homeschooling. I didn't have to like do this pitch for homeschooling. Of course, I completely support people in their own educational choices. I'm going to have my thoughts about pros and cons, especially in our present cultural age, depending where you're coming from as a Christian, on the public school system and so on. Another talk for another time. But ultimately, I do see this and support it. Really, ultimately, as a parental decision, not a government decision, not somebody else's pressure or your mother-in-law's decision. Your decision as parents. So when she really told me her why, literally she backed herself into this. She knew why she was doing it. And you could just see her like sitting up taller, turning the corner and being like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why not only I would, but I could see it, though I just kind of let her say it when she was ready. She's like, I am gonna do this. So I was like, great, because crystallizing your why and talking it out with someone, if that really helps, or writing it out if you're more of like a writer, will help you understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, next, how to do it, and finally, to know how to persevere. Because invariably, you're going to hit challenges, your own internal challenges like self-doubt or just like uncertainty, not knowing what to do and how to do it. But if you know why you're doing it, especially when the challenges come from outside, like well-meaning relatives and friends who perhaps have their own misconceptions or concerns about homeschooling, and they're just only too What's going on with my hair? They're only too, willing to tell you all of their fears and their concerns because they are just trying to rescue your children from a life of being unsocialized, idiots or something. It really helps to have a strong why. That's like an anchor in the storm, or like strong roots that are going to hold you when the pressure mounts, to hold firm to a decision that's super important to you. We know why you're doing it, and you can deal with a lot more stuff. You can overcome the internal challenges and the external ones a lot easier. And I would be doing a disservice to you if I did not tell you that those will come. Second, I recommended that, if she was going to proceed with homeschooling, that I would recommend she check the local regulations. Like, because we live in the same area, I was able to just give her a quick heads up of what is the law in our province. So she was just like, oh, great, that's handy. But if someone lives somewhere else, if you live somewhere else in the States, as far as I understand, it's all done state to state, province to province. You can check with your local homeschool association. It's probably right there on the website. They'll let you know the lowdown so you can be aware of what the law is, because there are different requirements in all different places. Some of them are very, relaxed and low key. Others are much more involved. So good to know. Next, this is a big one. Detox. I haven't experienced it, like I said, but I've seen it, I've heard of it. And again, to serve you well, heads up, most kids transitioning from another form of schooling, whether it was like private school, particularly if it was like a type of public school, Catholic school, like a big institutional setting, even if they were only in kindergarten, the rule of thumb is to expect 1 month for every academic year they spent in the system, detoxing from that system. That could look differently from everybody. Some people, it might be really smooth and easy and very light. Other people, it might be a little more rough. So my friend experienced this over the summer. As her, and she was like, have you heard, like this, it's happening, right? This detox thing. And I'm like, yeah, like that actually, I didn't realize it would happen so young. I kind of thought it was more, maybe if you were a couple of years into the system. Well, it can happen as early as just like kindergarten level or grade 1. So 1 month for every year, detox will look different. And it's really just, acclimatizing to a new way, especially when they're used to being around, 25, 30, their same age peers. It is a different social environment that has serious pros and cons. Another talk for another day. So just getting used to the flow, being at home, being, not being like a Saturday when you're at home, right? It's not the weekend, getting used to the new routine, the new expectations. And maybe there's also some stuff to process of leaving the school, especially if there was some more rough things that happened and needing to process maybe some social trauma or just other things that happened in the school environment that led you to homeschool in the first place. So giving yourself some space to go slow rather than just be like, we're going to homeschool, and going full-time 6 hours a day trying to recreate the institutional environment just like on a mini version in your home. Highly advise against it. And that's kind of like what I've heard from most homeschoolers is go slow in the beginning. Really only add maybe 1 course at a time. Test it out for the week. Make sure, okay, we got our math down. We're feeling good about our, because you're learning too as a mom. This is new to you. It's totally new to me. And then you're like, okay, we're feeling good about our math. Let's add in maybe the language arts now, right? And then you can begin to add things. And it might take a couple months. You might spend your whole first year detoxing, dealing with character issues, getting into the flow, and kind of just both of you acclimatizing, giving yourself and your kids, because you might have more than one kid that's transitioning, the space and the grace to adjust, to get used to it physically, psychologically, emotionally, because it is a different lifestyle. It's a different educational approach. Like I said, it's not recreating, big school as we call it, or institutional government schooling, even private Christian schooling in your own home. You have the flexibility to do it your own way within the constraints of your law, which I would advise you to do, but it's going to look different for everybody. And you're going to figure it out. And by the end of the year, you're probably going to be like, okay, learning lessons, what worked well, what didn't work well, what am I going to adjust? And you can pivot as you go along. Take it slow, add things slowly, give yourself some grace. And if your kids are really struggling for, whatever that looks like for you, maybe step it back a little bit and just nurture them where they need it the most and figure out, how to meet those needs so that the transition to homeschooling can be positive, because you didn't push it or rush it or just expect they could make, and you could make an overnight switch like that, completely change your lives and your routine, seamlessly. I just think that's kind of like good common sense rule of thumb. But a lot of people don't realize there is a detox period. Like I said, 1 month for every year, just to give you a gauge of what to expect. If it goes better, bonus, run with it. So if you would like some assistance in that, and you really are like, this is great, Tara, this is good general advice. I would appreciate actually some very personalized advice like you gave to your friend on the porch that day. Feel free to reach out and connect with me. I actually have one-on-one coaching appointments available through my website. Link is in the description. So if you want to set something up where we can talk privately one-on-one and I can really hear your situation, give you some custom advice, I am happy to do that. So feel free to access that if you like. It's there for you. So I'd tell you how the story closed. So we sat on the porch for 30 minutes. Like I said, she was just unloading her why, even shed a couple of tears. I don't think she realized she had them in her. I don't think she'd really processed up until that time some of the depth of the stuff that, her daughter had gone through and her own feelings about that and why she was homeschooling. So I was honored, honestly, to be there at such a vulnerable, tender moment. It was a very beautiful heart to heart. I think our friendship took another leap, which is so cool to be making new friends, especially in your neighborhood, especially homeschooling. So she goes home that night, tells her husband, downloads the whole conversation. She texts me back later that night and she's like, we're doing this. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's great. No pressure from me. I'm still going to love you even if you had chosen to stay in the system or whatever, right? But I was so touched that God had brought me from a place of being an absolute know-nothing with homeschooling to a place where now I'm encouraging other moms really by just asking them good questions and letting them figure it out for themselves and just empowering them. It was so beautiful. It was just such a beautiful, happily ever after for me. And I've talked to other people, and they've shared with me and they've, chosen to do it differently. So they said, it's not as if I'm so brand loyal that if you don't homeschool, a friend of mine or something. It was just really lovely when she thanked me like that. So if you're thinking of homeschooling or someone, close to you is thinking of homeschooling, I just recommend start with that question. Even if you're not a homeschooler, you can be like, oh, that's really interesting. So why do you want to homeschool? You're genuinely interested in knowing. That will really help them figure out why. And then from there, they can figure out how, especially plugging into your local homeschool connections, like a person or the homeschool association. It just gets so much easier when you know why you're doing it. So it's my encouragement to you ladies today, whether you're thinking of it or someone close to you is thinking about it, this absolutely can be done with some good questions and some support. You can do it. I know, because I'm living proof. And my friend now down the street, she's so excited to start homeschooling actively now that they've gone through the detox period just next week. So super cool. Great connecting with you today. I look forward to seeing you in the comments below. Ask me any questions you want. And I'd be happy to connect with you in the Joyful Competent Moms of Many group. Otherwise, God bless you. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.